The Helix Nebula was beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Clouds of glowing gas stretched for billions of kilometers, filled with radiation that played havoc with sensors. Stellar winds created unpredictable currents. Visibility was terrible. Navigation was a nightmare. It was the perfect place for an ambush. Admiral Una Choi had positioned her fleet 3 days ago, using the nebula's natural cover to hide 800 ships. They waited in complete silence, weapons powered down, engines cold. Only the most basic life support systems running. They looked like debris on sensors. Exactly as planned, the Dravenok Grand Fleet was approaching. 2,000 ships, the largest military force the Dravenok had ever assembled. General Vexmar commanded from his flagship Dominance, a massive dreadnought that was more weapon than ship. He was confident. How could he not be? He outnumbered the humans more than 2 to 1. What he did not know was that Dr. Hieron Nam had spent years studying Dravenok military psychology. She understood how they thought. She knew they valued direct confrontation above all else. They would see the nebula as an obstacle, not an opportunity. They would push through it, expecting to find the human fleet on the other side. They would be half right. Admiral Choi stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching sensor readings carefully. The Dravenok fleet had entered the nebula. They were spreading out, searching for the humans. Their formation was breaking up as ships moved through the dense gas clouds. "They are taking the bait," her tactical officer reported. "Good. Maintain silence until they are fully committed. I want them deep in the nebula before we spring the trap." Across the human fleet, captains waited tensely. Captain Ji-Won Lee sat in her command chair aboard Indomitable, her fingers drumming against the armrest. Her ship was hidden in one of the densest gas clouds, practically invisible. Around her, 19 other destroyers waited for the signal. This was going to be the biggest battle of her life, maybe the biggest battle of the century. She was 34 years old and about to help decide the future of human-alien relations. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. General Vexmar grew impatient as his fleet pushed deeper into the nebula. His sensors were useless. His communications were spotty. This was not how the Dravenok fought. They needed clear space, open battlefields where strength could meet strength. "Where are they?" he demanded. "The humans must be here somewhere." His sensor officer studied the displays, confused. "General, I am detecting what might be debris fields scattered throughout the nebula, but the readings are inconsistent. It could be sensor noise. Check those debris fields. Send scout ships to investigate." 3 Dravenok scouts moved toward the nearest cluster of suspicious readings. They came within a few kilometers. Their sensors swept across the objects, trying to get a clear picture through the interference. The debris powered up all at once. Hundreds of ships, their engines blazing to life simultaneously. The scouts barely had time to transmit a warning before human weapons fire disabled them. Admiral Choi's voice rang across the fleet channel. "All units execute Thermopylae Protocol. Show them what happens when you fight humanity in our kind of battlefield." The battle began in chaos and fury. Human ships emerged from hiding all around the Dravenok fleet, not as a single formation, but as dozens of small groups, each targeting isolated enemy vessels. The Dravenok numerical advantage meant nothing when their ships could not support each other through the dense gas clouds. Thousands of drones swarmed between the fleets, creating even more confusion. Human electronic warfare systems jammed Dravenok communications. Sensor ghosts appeared everywhere, making it impossible to tell which contacts were real ships and which were decoys. Captain Ji-Won led her destroyer wing in a devastating attack on a Dravenok battle group that had become separated from the main fleet. 20 human destroyers against 50 Dravenok cruisers. On paper, the Dravenok should have won easily, but Ji-Won did not fight fair. Her ships used the nebula itself as a weapon. They fired missiles that ignited pockets of gas, creating explosions that blinded sensors and damaged shields. They used microjumps to appear and disappear, striking from unexpected angles. They coordinated their attacks with machine precision, overwhelming individual targets before moving to the next. Within 30 minutes, the Dravenok battle group was reduced to scattered survivors trying desperately to escape. General Vexmar watched his tactical display with growing horror. His fleet was being torn apart. Ships that lost contact never reported back. Entire battle groups simply disappeared from sensors. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, striking from the nebula like ghosts. "All ships converge on my position," he ordered. "We must concentrate our forces. But the order was easier given than followed. Many of his ships could not receive it through the interference. Others were already engaged in desperate battles. The Grand Fleet was fragmenting, each piece fighting its own isolated war. Admiral Choi watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. This was working better than she had hoped. The Dravenok were trained for one kind of warfare. She was giving them something completely different. "Move the main battle line forward," she ordered. "Let us finish this." 300 human capital ships, the core of her fleet, emerged from the deepest part of the nebula. They had been waiting, engines cold, for this moment. Now they powered up and advanced in perfect formation, targeting the scattered remains of the Dravenok Grand Fleet. The sight was terrifying. 300 ships moving as one, their weapons charging, their shields shimmering with power. They looked unstoppable. They looked like the wrath of an entire species made manifest. General Vexmar finally understood. He had walked into a trap. The humans had never intended to fight a conventional battle. They had lured him into terrain that negated his advantages and amplified theirs. He had lost this battle before it even began. His flagship was surrounded now. 30 human ships had converged on his position, their weapons trained on dominance. He could fight. He could die with honor. But hundreds of his crew would die with him. Admiral Choi's voice came through on an open channel. Her tone was not mocking or triumphant. It was almost gentle. "General Vexmar, your fleet is defeated. More than half your ships are disabled or destroyed. You have lost. I am offering you a chance to surrender with honor. Save the lives of your remaining crew. End this." Vexmar's claws dug into his command chair. Everything in his culture, his training, his instincts screamed at him to refuse. To fight to the last breath. To die rather than submit. But he looked around his bridge. Young officers, barely adults. Crew members who had families waiting for them. Soldiers who had followed him into this disaster because they trusted his judgment. He had failed them. The least he could do was keep them alive. The word caught in his throat. He tried again. "I request terms of surrender." On Draven Prime, Empress Kovarath received the news with numb shock. Her Grand Fleet was destroyed. Her best general had surrendered. The war was lost. She sat alone in her throne room, trying to understand how this had happened. 3 days ago, she had believed the Dravenok Empire was invincible. Now she knew the truth. They had been strong among weak opponents. But humanity was something different. Her communications officer entered quietly. "Your Majesty, Admiral Choi has sent a message. She is offering ceasefire terms. What does she demand?" Kovarath asked, expecting the worst. Territory, resources, tribute, that was how wars ended. "She demands we begin peace negotiations immediately. She is offering medical aid for our wounded. She is returning General Vexmar and all prisoners as a gesture of good faith. She is asking only that we talk." Kovarath stared at her officer, confused. "That makes no sense. They have won. They could demand anything." "Yes, Your Majesty, but they are demanding nothing except conversation." For the first time, Kovarath began to understand that she had misjudged humanity completely. They had not gone to war for conquest or revenge. They had gone to war to earn respect, to prove they could not be dismissed or insulted without consequence, and having proven that, they were offering peace. "Accept their terms," she said quietly. "Request that Ambassador Park lead the human delegation. I will meet with him personally." Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread like wildfire. The casualty reports told the story. Human losses: 43 ships destroyed, 89 damaged. Dravenok losses: 1,200 ships destroyed or disabled. 600 surrendered. It was the most one-sided major fleet engagement in galactic history. But what shocked the galaxy even more was what happened after. Human ships began rescue operations immediately. They pulled Dravenok survivors from damaged vessels. They provided medical care without discrimination. They treated their enemies with the same care they gave their own wounded. Counselor Thalen addressed an emergency session of the Galactic Council. His voice carried across the chamber with unusual force. "You have all witnessed something remarkable. Humanity fought with incredible ferocity and skill. They won decisively, and then at the moment of victory they offered peace. This is not the behavior of a barbaric species. This is the behavior of a mature civilization that understands the true cost of war." He paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. 24 hours after the incident, Earth was burning with anger. Not literally, of course. The cities were functioning normally. People went to work, children went to school, the economy hummed along. But beneath that normal surface, something had awakened. Something that had been sleeping for generations. Prime Minister Tai Hyung-kang stood before the emergency session of Parliament, looking out at hundreds of angry faces. The chamber was packed beyond capacity. Representatives who had been recalled from vacations, pulled from retirement, summoned from colony worlds. Everyone wanted to be here for this moment. The footage had played on every news channel. Minho's bloodied face had become a symbol. Social media exploded with outrage. Protests formed outside Dravenok embassy buildings on Earth and Mars. People who had never cared about interstellar politics suddenly cared very much. Members of Parliament, Kang began, his voice steady despite the chaos. We face a decision that will define our place in the galaxy. The chamber fell silent. Kang had that effect on people. He had covered wars as a journalist before entering politics. He had seen the resource wars firsthand, had written about mass graves and burned cities. He understood what war meant in ways that most politicians did not. General Vexmar struck our ambassador in front of the entire galaxy, Kang continued. This was not an accident. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate act meant to humiliate humanity and show that we are weak. A roar of agreement filled the chamber. Representatives shouted demands for action, for justice, for war. Kang raised his hand for silence. I have asked Ambassador Park to join us via hologram. Let us hear from the man who suffered this assault. Minho's image appeared above the chamber floor. His face was swollen and bruised. Medical tape covered his cheekbone. He looked tired but calm. Thank you, Prime Minister, Minho said quietly. I want everyone to understand what happened. General Vexmar did not strike me in anger. He struck me because he believes humanity is weak. He believes we will accept this insult because we need the Dravenok more than they need us. Are we weak? Someone shouted from the back of the chamber. Minho was quiet for a long moment. No. But we have chosen to appear weak because it serves our goals. We have built a reputation as peacemakers, as diplomats, as the species that prefers words to weapons. This reputation has served us well. Until now. What do you recommend? Kang asked. I recommend we give the Dravenok one chance to apologize, Minho said. One chance to understand their mistake. If they refuse, then we show them what humanity truly is. The vote was called. The result was overwhelming. Parliament authorized military action if the Dravenok failed to apologize within 72 hours. Only a handful of representatives voted against it, and even they looked uncomfortable doing so. In a military command center deep beneath Geneva, Admiral Yuna Choi was already 3 steps ahead. She stood before a holographic display showing the current deployment of human forces. To most species in the galaxy, humanity's military looked modest, a few hundred ships scattered across a dozen systems, enough for self-defense and not much more. But the display showed a different story. Hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt, secret bases inside hollowed-out moons, reserve fleets that had been maintained for decades but never revealed. Weapons systems developed in black projects. Soldiers trained for a war no one thought would come. Admiral Choi had spent 20 years preparing for this possibility. She was 48 now, with gray streaking her black hair. She had risen through the ranks during border conflicts with pirates and minor warlords. She had a reputation for unconventional thinking and an ability to see 3 moves ahead of her opponents. Status report, she said to her command staff. A younger officer stepped forward. Admiral, we have 800 ships ready for immediate deployment. Another 300 can be ready within 48 hours. All captains have received their sealed orders. And Captain Jiwon? Her destroyer wing is standing by. She wants to lead the first strike. Choi smiled slightly. Jiwon Lee was exactly the kind of officer humanity needed right now. Young, aggressive, brilliant. Born on Mars, she carried a chip on her shoulder about Earth's historical dominance. That competitive fire made her dangerous in the best possible way. Let her lead, Choi decided. She has earned it. Meanwhile, Dr. Hyron Nam was doing something more important than preparing weapons. She was preparing intelligence. In her office at the Institute for Xenological Studies, Hyeron had spent the last 20 hours reviewing everything humanity knew about Dravenok military culture. Their tactics, their psychology, their weaknesses. She had lived among them for 2 years during her research. She understood them better than almost any human alive, and she had found something important. The Dravenok respected direct confrontation. They believed in meeting force with force, strength with strength. Their entire military doctrine was built around overwhelming power and frontal assault. It was glorious. It was honorable. It was predictable. Hieron sent her report to Admiral Choi with a simple note. They expect us to fight like them. We should fight like us instead. The 72-hour deadline began with a broadcast from Prime Minister Kang. Every species in the galaxy received it. Every news organization covered it. It was impossible to miss. Kang stood before the cameras looking tired but determined. The Dravenok Empire has 72 hours to issue a formal apology for the assault on Ambassador Park. The apology must come from General Vexmar himself. The Dravenok must also provide guarantees that diplomatic personnel will be safe in their territory in the future. He paused, letting that sink in. If these demands are not met, humanity will respond with military force. We do not want war. We have spent generations building peace, but we will not accept being treated as lesser beings. The choice is yours. Across the galaxy, the reaction was mixed. Some species expressed sympathy for humanity. Others suggested the humans were overreacting. Many simply did not believe humanity had the capability to back up their threats. On Draven Prime, General Vexmar held his own press conference. He stood before the cameras in full military dress, his scarred scales gleaming. His response was brief and dismissive. Humanity makes empty threats. They have no military worth mentioning. They have never fought a real war against a real opponent. If they want an apology, they can beg for it. He smiled at the cameras. It was not a friendly smile. I invite the humans to try their military response. We will crush them in days and teach them the price of arrogance. Counselor Thalen watched that broadcast from his chambers in the Galactic Council building. The ancient energy being felt something he rarely experienced. Genuine fear. Not for himself, but for the Dravenok. They had no idea what was coming. He tried to warn them. He requested an emergency meeting with Empress Kovarath. He sent detailed reports about human history, about their wars, about what they were capable of when pushed. She thanked him politely and did nothing. She believed in her military. She believed in General Vexmar. She believed humanity was bluffing. The 72 hours ticked away. Human civilians quietly left Dravenok space. Trade ships returned home. Embassy staff packed their belongings and destroyed sensitive files. The evacuation was orderly and professional, which somehow made it more ominous. On the last day, Minho had a private conversation with Prime Minister Kang. It was not recorded. No one else was present, just two men who understood what was about to happen. I am sorry I could not prevent this, Minho said. Kang shook his head. You did everything right. Some people only learn through pain. The Dravenok are about to receive an education. How many will die? As few as possible, Kang promised. This is not about revenge. This is about respect. The deadline expired at exactly midnight, Earth Standard Time. General Vexmar was giving another interview, laughing about human weakness, when the news came through. Every human ship in Dravenok space had simultaneously jumped to faster than light. They were gone in seconds. Clean, professional, no panic, no chaos. Vexmar smiled. See, they run. They are cowards. But one of his junior officers looked worried. General, they did not run toward Earth. They jumped toward our military installations. The smile faded from Vexmar's face. Aboard the human flagship Defiant, Admiral Choi stood on the bridge surrounded by holographic displays. Around her, 800 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at 7 different Dravenok military bases simultaneously. It was the most coordinated military operation in galactic history. Perfect timing. Perfect positioning. No civilians in the target zones. Just military installations and the soldiers who chose to defend them. Admiral Choi opened a channel that broadcast to every ship in her fleet. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. All ships commence Operation Glasshammer. Remember your training. Minimize casualties. But show them what humanity has become. And the galaxy learned that humanity had not forgotten how to fight. They had simply been choosing not to. Military Base Delta 7 was the pride of the Dravenok Forward Defense Network. 200 platforms orbiting a gas giant. 500 warships on permanent station, enough firepower to flatten a small moon. It had never been attacked in its 30-year history. That was about to change. Captain Jiwan Lee stood on the bridge of her destroyer Indomitable, watching her tactical display with intense focus. Around her ship, 99 other human vessels maintained perfect formation. They had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel exactly where Admiral Choi had planned. Right in the middle of the Dravenok defense fleet, the Dravenok were scrambling. Their sensors had detected the human arrival, but they were confused. How had the humans appeared inside their defensive perimeter? Why were there only 100 ships? This had to be a mistake, G1 smiled. They still did not understand. Typical. All ships engage at will, she ordered. Remember, we are here to disable their military capability, not to massacre them. Precision strikes only. Her weapons officer acknowledged and began targeting the nearest Dravenok battlecruiser. The ship was massive, easily 5 times the size of Indomitable. It bristled with weapons and heavy armor. Against a conventional opponent, it would be nearly invulnerable. Humanity did not fight conventionally. The first wave was not missiles or energy weapons. It was information warfare. Human electronic warfare systems developed from centuries of cyber conflict on Earth punched through Dravenok computer security like it was made of paper. Targeting systems went offline. Communications failed. Sensors showed false readings. The Dravenok fleet suddenly found itself blind, deaf, and confused. Then came the drones. Thousands of them, small, fast, expendable. They swarmed around Dravenok ships like angry insects, forcing the enemy to waste ammunition on targets that cost almost nothing to replace. While the Dravenok focused on the drones, human ships moved into optimal firing positions. Jiwan watched her tactical display with satisfaction. The Dravenok were reacting exactly as Dr. Hiran had predicted. They were trying to fight with brute force, throwing more firepower at problems that required finesse. They were making themselves vulnerable. Target the battlecruiser's engine section, G1 ordered. Railgun, full power. The railgun was a simple weapon in concept. It used magnetic acceleration to fire a solid projectile at a significant fraction of light speed. No explosives needed. The kinetic energy alone was devastating. And unlike energy weapons, there was no beam to track back to its source. The projectile hit the battlecruiser's engines and punched straight through. The massive ship shuddered, its power systems failing. It was not destroyed, but it was out of the fight. Its crew would survive. Jiwan had made sure of that. All around the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships used their superior maneuverability to dart in and out of engagement range. They targeted specific systems, engines, weapons, communications, rather than trying to destroy entire ships. It was surgical, precise, efficient, and absolutely terrifying to watch. The galaxy was watching, of course. News drones broadcast everything in real time. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds saw the Dravenok fleet, supposedly one of the strongest in the sector, being systematically taken apart by a human force 1/5 its size. In the Galactic Council chambers, representatives from dozens of species watched in stunned silence. Many of them had bet on the Dravenok. Many of them had dismissed human military capability as negligible. Now they were reconsidering everything they thought they knew. Councillor Thalon sat in his usual place, his energy form flickering with what might have been satisfaction. He had tried to warn them. No one had listened. Now they were learning the hard way. How are they doing this? Demanded the representative from the Kelvin hierarchy. The humans should be losing. The numbers favor the Dravenok by 5-1. Thalon's voice was quiet but clear. The humans spent 10,000 years fighting each other before they reached the stars. They developed technologies for warfare that we never needed. Electronic warfare, precision strikes, asymmetric tactics. They are not fighting the Dravenok military. They are fighting the way humans have always fought, with cunning and adaptability. Back at Delta 7, G1 was pursuing a Dravenok destroyer that was trying to flee toward a nearby civilian mining station. The enemy captain was desperate, hoping the humans would not fire near civilians. He was wrong about what the humans would do, but right to be worried. Helm, prepare for micro-jump, G1 ordered. Weapons, prepare ion cannon. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had drilled this maneuver 1,000 times. It was dangerous. It was difficult. It was exactly the kind of thing that made G1's reputation. The Indomitable jumped. Not a long jump across star systems, but a short, precise jump that lasted less than a second. The ship disappeared from behind the Dravenok destroyer and reappeared directly in front of it, inside the mining station's defensive perimeter. Before the Dravenok captain could react, Jiwan fired the ion cannon. The beam scrambled every electronic system on the destroyer, without damaging the hull or harming the crew. The enemy ship went dark, drifting helplessly. Jiwan opened a channel to the mining station. "This is Captain Lee of the Earth Fleet. The disabled ship will not harm you. We are transmitting coordinates for Dravenok rescue vessels. Please remain calm." The move had taken less than 30 seconds. The civilians on the station were safe. The enemy ship was neutralized, and the entire galaxy had just watched a human captain execute a maneuver that most species considered impossible. Admiral Choi watched the same footage from her command ship and allowed herself a moment of pride. Jiwan was everything the next generation of human officers should be. Skilled, disciplined, and creative. The girl had a bright future ahead of her, if they all survived this, of course. 20 minutes into the battle, Delta 7's commander realized he had lost. Of his 500 ships, more than 300 were disabled or destroyed. The human force had suffered only minimal damage. A few ships with damaged shields, a handful with minor hull breaches. Nothing significant. He sent a transmission requesting ceasefire. Admiral Choi accepted immediately. The fighting stopped. Human ships began broadcasting instructions for the disabled Dravenok vessels. Medical aid was offered. Rescue coordinates were shared. The transition from combat to humanitarian assistance was so smooth, it seemed rehearsed. Because it was. The humans had planned for this moment. They knew they would win. They knew they would need to show mercy afterward. This was not their first war, and they had learned from all the others. On Draven Prime, Empress Kovarath watched the battle reports with growing horror. Delta 7 had fallen in less than an hour. The other 6 targets told similar stories. Human forces were systematically dismantling her military, with minimal casualties on either side. This was not how wars were supposed to work. The Dravenok way was straightforward. Fleet met fleet. The stronger side won. Honor was satisfied. But the humans were fighting a completely different kind of war. General Vexmar stood beside her, his face unreadable. For the first time since this began, he looked uncertain. "Your Majesty," he said slowly, "I recommend we mobilize the Grand Fleet immediately. All 2,000 ships. We must crush them with overwhelming force before they can strike again." Kovarath looked at him for a long moment. She was beginning to understand that Vexmar had led them into a disaster. But she could not back down now. Not without losing everything. "Do it," she ordered. "Gather every ship we have. Find the human fleet and destroy it." Vexmar bowed and left to carry out her orders. He would lead the Grand Fleet personally. He would redeem himself by crushing these upstart humans. He would show the galaxy that the Dravenok were still the dominant military power. He was walking into exactly the trap Admiral Choi had prepared. Prime Minister Kang made another broadcast to the galaxy. His message was simple and direct. Humanity has struck 7 military targets. We have destroyed or disabled over 1,000 Dravenok warships. We have caused 0 civilian casualties. This demonstrates our capability and our restraint. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. We offer the Dravenok Empire one final chance. Apologize for the assault on our ambassador. Agree to respect diplomatic protocols in the future. End this conflict now before more soldiers die unnecessarily. His expression hardened. Or continue this war and learn a lesson that humanity paid for in blood over thousands of years. We have forgotten more about warfare than most species will ever know. We stopped fighting each other and started building peace. But we never forgot how. The broadcast ended. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what the Dravenok would decide. General Vexmar's response came quickly. He appeared on every news channel, his scales gleaming with battle dress, his voice full of contempt. The Dravenok Empire does not negotiate with those who attack us. We do not apologize to inferiors. The Grand Fleet is mobilizing. We will find your ships and crush them. Then we will teach humanity the price of arrogance. Admiral Choi watched that broadcast and smiled. It was not a happy smile. They are coming to us, she said to her command staff. Just as we planned. Prepare the fleet. We will meet them at the Helix Nebula. And there we will end this war. The Grand Plaza of Draven Prime stretched before Ambassador Minho Park like a sea of alien faces. Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. Representatives from 50 different worlds had gathered under the purple sky to witness what everyone called a historic moment. Holographic cameras floated everywhere, broadcasting the ceremony to billions across the galaxy. Minho adjusted his formal diplomatic coat and tried not to think about how much could go wrong. 30 years as a diplomat had taught him that ceremonies like this were fragile things. One wrong word, one misunderstood gesture, and months of careful negotiation could collapse. Beside him, Dr. Hyerin Nam studied her datapad with the focused intensity she brought to everything. As humanity's leading expert on alien cultures, she had spent months preparing him for this moment. She looked up and gave him a small nod. Everything was ready. The Dravenok Empire had invited humanity to sign a trade treaty. It was a big deal. The Dravenok controlled 3 star systems and had one of the largest militaries in the sector. Getting them to see humans as equals had taken years of patient work. This treaty would open new markets, new opportunities, new friendships, or so Minho had thought. The ceremony began with traditional Dravenok warrior displays. Huge reptilian soldiers, each standing 8 feet tall with crimson scales that gleamed in the afternoon light, performed ritual combat dances. Their movements were brutal and beautiful at once. Each gesture spoke of strength, of dominance, of power earned through conflict. Minho watched politely and clapped at the appropriate moments. He had seen worse. Much worse. As a young man, he had fought in the Mars Rebellion, back when humanity was still learning how to live together in space. He had seen what happened when people chose violence over words. That experience had shaped everything he became. The treaty documents were brought out on a floating platform made of dark crystal. The crowd grew quiet. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Empress Kovarath herself would sign first, followed by Minho, making it official. But as Minho stepped forward, a massive figure moved to block his path. General Vexmar was even larger than the other Dravenok warriors. His scales bore the white scars of countless battles, his eyes cold and yellow like chips of ice fixed on Minho with open contempt. The general had opposed this treaty from the start. Everyone knew it. He had called humans weak, soft, dependent on diplomacy because they lacked the courage to fight. Minho stopped walking. His heart rate increased, but his face remained calm. Years of training took over. Ambassador Park, the general said, his voice carrying across the silent plaza. Before you sign this treaty, I must speak truth. Minho inclined his head. Protocol demanded he listen. Hyerin's hand moved to her comm device, ready to call for help if needed. Your people hide behind words, Vexmar continued. You speak of peace because you are too weak to embrace war. You negotiate because you cannot conquer. The Dravenok Empire makes a mistake by treating you as equals. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Other alien diplomats exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. You did not insult guests at a treaty ceremony. You certainly did not insult them in front of the entire galaxy. Minho kept his voice level, professional. General, humanity chooses diplomacy because we understand its value. We have learned lessons that... The general's clawed hand struck him across the face. The impact sent Minho stumbling backward. He hit the ground hard. Blood filled his mouth, hot and metallic. His vision blurred. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard gasps, shouts, the confused buzz of thousands of voices all speaking at once. Hyerin was beside him instantly, her hands checking for serious injury. Security personnel from a dozen different species began moving toward them. The holographic cameras captured everything, every angle, every horrified expression. Minho's cheek was already swelling. He could feel blood running down his chin. But more than the physical pain, he felt something else. A cold clarity. A terrible understanding of what had just happened and what it meant. Slowly, carefully, he stood up. Hyerin tried to help him, but he waved her away gently. He had to do this himself. Every eye in the plaza watched him. Every camera in the galaxy focused on his bloodied face. He looked directly at General Vexmar. The general was smiling, confident he had proven his point. Humans were weak. They would accept this insult. They would apologize and continue with the ceremony because they needed this treaty. They were so very wrong. Minho wiped blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but absolutely clear. Every microphone in the plaza caught his words. This treaty is void. Humanity withdraws from all negotiations with the Dravenok Empire. He turned and walked away. Each step was measured, dignified. He refused to run. He refused to show weakness. High Aaron and the rest of his small diplomatic team fell in behind him, their faces pale with shock. Behind them, General Vexmar laughed. The sound echoed across the plaza. Many of the alien diplomats laughed with him, nervous and uncertain. They had seen humans negotiate away insults before. This was theater, surely. Minho would calm down. Earth's government would demand an apology. The Dravenok would offer one, and everything would return to normal. Only Councillor Thalen, the ancient energy being from the Praxian collective, did not laugh. He had studied human history more carefully than most. He knew what humans were capable of when pushed too far. He knew what they had done to each other, back before they learned to direct that capability outward. Fools. Thalen whispered to himself. You have no idea what you have just unleashed. Aboard his diplomatic ship, Minho finally allowed himself to show pain. He sank into a chair while High Aaron cleaned his wounds. The medical scanner showed a fractured cheekbone and some torn tissue. Nothing life-threatening, nothing that would not heal. But the political damage was permanent. Contact Earth, he told his communications officer. Priority 1, I need to speak with Prime Minister Kang immediately. The officer's hands shook as she established the connection. Within minutes, Kang's weathered face appeared on the view screen. The Prime Minister had been sleeping when the call came through. Now he was fully awake, his eyes hard. I have seen the footage, Kang said quietly. The whole world has seen it. Minho, I am sorry. What happens now is not your fault, Minho replied. I tried. We all tried. But some people only understand one language. Kang nodded slowly. His jaw tightened. I will call Parliament into emergency session. We will see what humanity decides. The call ended. Minho sat in silence, touching his swollen face gently. High Aaron stood nearby, her usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. What will they decide? She asked softly. Minho looked out the viewport at the stars. Out there, the galaxy continued on, unaware that something fundamental had changed. Out there, General Vexmar was probably celebrating his victory. Out there, thousands of species were discussing what had happened, forming opinions, placing bets on what humans would do next. They will decide, Minho said, that diplomacy has failed. On Earth, in the depths of military command centers that had been quiet for 80 years, lights began turning on. Admiral Yuna Choi received a message that brought her out of a sound sleep. She read it once, then again, then reached for her uniform. The message was simple. Prepare all fleets. Stand by for deployment orders. Across human space, in hidden shipyards and secret bases, humanity's true military might began to wake up. Weapon systems that had been maintained but never used powered on for the first time. Ships that had been built as insurance against a day no one thought would come received their crews. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson that humanity had paid for in blood over centuries of war. Peace is not weakness. It is a choice. And when that choice is taken away, when violence is answered with violence, humans remember very quickly how to fight. General Vexmar had wanted to see human strength. He was going to get his wish. I propose that humanity be granted a permanent seat on the Galactic Council Security Committee. They have earned it. The vote was Unity Station floated in neutral space, exactly halfway between Earth and Draven Prime. The massive structure had been built by the Galactic Council specifically for diplomatic negotiations between warring parties. It had hosted peace talks for a dozen conflicts over the centuries. None of those talks had been quite like this. Ambassador Minho Park stood in the docking bay, watching the Dravenok shuttle approach. His face had healed in the 2 weeks since the battle, but the scar remained. He could have had it removed. He chose not to. Let it serve as a reminder of why they were here. Dr. Herin Nam stood beside him, her usual confidence tempered by nervousness. This was the moment all her research had been building toward. Understanding the Dravenok well enough to bridge the gap between their species and humanity. She hoped she had not missed anything important. The shuttle landed. The airlock cycled. Empress Kovarath emerged, flanked by her advisors. She looked smaller than Minho had expected. Tired. The weight of losing a war showed in every movement. Their eyes met across the docking bay. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Kovarath did something that shocked everyone present. She bowed, deeply and formally in the Dravenok gesture of profound respect. Ambassador Park, she said, her voice carrying clearly. On behalf of the Dravenok Empire, I offer my sincere apology for the assault committed against you by General Vexmar. His actions were dishonorable and inexcusable. I apologize also for my own failure to prevent this conflict. Minho returned the bow, matching her depth exactly. Your Majesty, I accept your apology. Let us work together to ensure this never happens again. The formal negotiations began in a conference room, designed to accommodate dozens of different species. Representatives from neutral worlds attended as observers. The galaxy was watching this meeting carefully. What happened here would set precedents for decades to come. Minho presented humanity's demands. They were surprisingly modest. No territorial gains, no crushing reparations, no military occupation. Instead, humanity wanted formal diplomatic protocols, mutual defense agreements, cultural exchange programs, and trade partnerships. The Dravenok delegation looked confused. This was not how wars ended. The victor was supposed to take spoils, territory, resources, something tangible. One of Kovarath's advisors could not help but ask, Ambassador, your military victory was total. You could demand far more. Why do you request so little? Minho smiled slightly. Because we do not want subjects. We want partners. We do not want enemies forced into submission. We want friends who understand that we will defend ourselves when necessary, but prefer peace when possible. He leaned forward. Your Majesty, humanity fought this war to prove a point. The point is proven. Now we return to what we do best. Building relationships. Creating understanding. Moving forward together. Back on Earth, not everyone was happy with this approach. Prime Minister Taehyung Kang faced angry questions in Parliament. We lost 43 ships. One representative shouted. Thousands of our people died. And we are letting the Dravenok off with an apology. Kang's voice was steady but firm. We are not letting them off. We are choosing to be wise victors. Every human who died in this war died defending our honor and our principles. The best way to honor them is to ensure their sacrifice achieves lasting peace, not temporary revenge. He gestured to the holographic display showing the treaty terms. Look at what we have gained. Respect from every species in the galaxy, a permanent seat on the Security Committee, trading partners across dozens of systems, and most importantly, we have shown that humanity can be both strong and merciful. Admiral Yuna Choi stood in the back of the chamber. She had submitted her resignation that morning, feeling it was time to let younger officers lead. But Kang had refused to accept it. He needed her wisdom, he said. The military needed her example. She understood his point. The hardest part of war was not fighting it. The hardest part was ending it correctly. On Unity Station, negotiations continued for 3 days. Dr. Hieran worked tirelessly with Dravenok cultural experts, helping both sides understand each other better. She discovered that much of the conflict had stemmed from simple misunderstandings. The Dravenok respected strength above all else. To them, humanity's diplomatic approach had looked like weakness. They had not understood that humans chose peace because they knew war's true cost, not because they feared fighting. Now they understood. Now they respected humanity not despite their diplomacy, but because of it. It took real strength to choose peace when you had the power to destroy your enemies. General Vexmar remained in custody throughout the negotiations. His trial was held on the 4th day, with representatives from both species serving as judges. The charges were serious. Assault on a diplomat, reckless endangerment of his own forces, starting an unnecessary war. The Dravenok representatives wanted to give him the death penalty. It was traditional for generals who lost wars. Minho argued against it. Death solves nothing. It does not bring back those who died. It does not prevent future conflicts. I propose something different. Exile. Let General Vexmar spend time learning about the cultures he dismissed. Let him study human history. Let him understand what he caused. The tribunal agreed. Vexmar was stripped of his rank and honors. He would spend 5 years in exile, studying at the Institute for Human Diplomatic Studies. He would learn about Earth's wars, its peace movements, its slow journey toward unity. When the verdict was announced, Vexmar said nothing. His face was unreadable, but something in his eyes suggested he understood the mercy he had been shown. The final treaty was signed on the 6th day. The ceremony was nothing like the one that had started this whole disaster. This time, both sides approached with genuine respect. Empress Kovarath signed first, then Ambassador Minho, then representatives from 24 observer species, witnessing and endorsing the agreement. When it was done, Kovarath requested a private meeting with Minho. They sat together in a small room, no advisors, no cameras. Just two leaders who had seen their peoples through crisis. "I want you to understand something," Kovarath said quietly. "In Dravenok culture, we test those we might ally with. We push to see how they respond. General Vexmar believed he was performing that test. He expected you would challenge him to combat, or demand immediate satisfaction. When you walked away, he thought he had proven you weak." She looked down at her clawed hands. "He was wrong. You were not weak. You were patient. You gave us every chance to correct our mistake. And when we refused, you responded with overwhelming force, but also with mercy. You taught us more about strength in 2 weeks than we learned in centuries of conquest." Minho touched the scar on his face gently. "Your Majesty, humanity spent 10,000 years fighting itself. We built weapons that could destroy our entire species. We came within hours of using them multiple times. We know what it means to stand at the edge of destruction." He met her eyes. "That knowledge is our greatest weapon and our greatest weakness. We know how to fight total war because we nearly destroyed ourselves doing it. But we also know the price of that kind of conflict. That is why we choose peace whenever possible. And that is why you will lead the galaxy someday," Kovarath said. "Because you understand both war and peace. Because you have the strength to fight and the wisdom to stop." The news of the treaty spread across the galaxy within hours. Most species celebrated. Some remained cautious. But all of them had learned an important lesson. Humanity was no longer the peaceful but weak species that could be dismissed. They were the peaceful but powerful species that chose diplomacy from strength, not weakness. They were the species that would negotiate endlessly for peace but fight ruthlessly when forced. They were the species that could win wars decisively, but end them mercifully. Captain Jiwan Li, newly promoted to Rear Admiral, was given command of a joint human Dravenok patrol fleet. Her first mission was to protect trade routes that had been dangerous for years. With human tactics and Dravenok strength working together, piracy in those regions dropped to almost nothing within months. Dr. Hiren Nam was appointed as the first human ambassador to Draven Prime. She threw herself into the work of building understanding between the species. Within a year, cultural exchange programs were bringing Dravenok students to Earth and human students to Draven Prime. Admiral Choi did not retire after all. Instead, she founded a new academy dedicated to teaching combined human-alien military tactics. Students from 30 different species came to learn from the Admiral, who had won the Battle of Helix. She taught them strategy, tactics, and something more important: the wisdom to know when not to fight. Prime Minister Kang served 2 more terms before finally retiring. His legacy was secure. He was the leader who guided humanity through its first major interstellar conflict and emerged with both victory and honor intact. And Ambassador Minho Park, he became Secretary of Galactic Affairs, working tirelessly to prevent conflicts before they started. His scar became famous across the galaxy, a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from a fight, and the second bravest thing is to finish that fight decisively when walking away is no longer possible. The galaxy had learned its